What great show, the Sick Podcast Steeler Crazy with a very special guest. I am Jay York Football. This is Mic'd Up Sports One. Let's press play, Jimmy, and get to it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
This is the NFL Exec of the Year in 2000. Spent a lot of time as GM with the Saints and Dolphins. A fantastic football mind. Works with The Athletic right now. Has a great podcast. The Football GM pod. It is none other up in Idaho than Randy Mueller, former GM. I want to start this off by talking about the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy, obviously, who just signed a contract extension. I feel like he's quite polarizing in Pittsburgh for reasons that we don't understand. What I've gleaned from some of your social media and podcasts is that you're a pretty big fan of Mike Tomlin, correct?
Yeah, without a doubt.
And why do you think he's so polarizing? I mean, is it the fact that obviously there hasn't been a ring that came to Pittsburgh lately? Do we have higher expectations for teams that naturally have had success over the years?
Well, I think expectations are definitely a part of everybody's opinion, whether they, want to face it or not. I agree. I think Pittsburgh has been really good for a really long time, and maybe they don't have more Super Bowls to show for it. But I got news for you. It is hard to be in the hunt every year and have a chance, and the Steelers do that with Mike Tomlin. I just think Mike is an excellent A1 communicator. He's an excellent A1 leader. I think sometimes the staff in the past has let him down a little bit, but for the most part, I think Mike, if he's accountable to that staff, is going to be there for another 10 years for sure. I like everything I know about him. I'm not a personal friend. I don't know any, closeness to him, but I have a lot of people that actually work for me in New Orleans that are in the front office, and I know they all speak highly.
Yeah, good to know. And obviously, it's hard to speak on behalf of the Steelers organization. We'll get that out of the way right now. You've never worked for them. However, I think you mentioned, coaches and front offices speaking highly of him. There's been a lot of criticism in regard to coordinators that have come along under him over the past decade. In your experience, how often are coaches involved in that hiring process, if you can speak to that whatsoever?
Well, I think they're very involved. And in my cases, and I've hired a few staffs, I would say that head coach is 75% of the vote. I may have some questions or some angles that I would want to converse about, just things that maybe wouldn't come under a normal discussion with the head coach or an interview. But I'm going to lean on where the head coach thinks, what he thinks. But having said that, sometimes I think when you're have been in one spot for a long period of time, like Mike, even like a Pete Carroll in Seattle, Sean Payton for a while in New Orleans, sometimes you struggle when you have coaches that you're just not accountable for everybody of. And so I think that is hard for a veteran, older school coaches. And I think they hesitate to make changes. They hesitate to rock the boat because of prior successes. And I think that's a hard thing for coaches that have been around a long time to keep it fresh and to keep grinding and to keep holding everybody accountable. That's a tough task.
Yeah, you mentioned the name Sean Payton, obviously a head coach who had a massive amount of success under you guys in New Orleans and was somebody who was there for a long time, which you just don't see very often now in the NFL. Can you speak to how important it was to have that continuity? Because the Steelers' culture and organization obviously prides himself in the fact that 3 coaches, in the last 50 years, roughly. How insane is that?
Yeah. Well, in this day and age when long-term is about 3 years, that's unbelievable. And I think it's a definite plus. I think, and kind of like I mentioned, sometimes success, though, begets a little bit of complacency. And as long as that head coach or the decision makers still can hold people accountable, I think that's That's where you draw the line. And sometimes that's not easy for those who have had success to do. They don't feel like they need to change. Now, the change part of the league, just look around the league. I mean, a third of the coaches change every year. So if you have a staff, and provided it's a competent staff, you're going to be ahead of a third of the league, in my opinion, every year, because you don't have to undergo the learning curve, the changing of the staff like some have. So it should be a benefit to the Steelers for having the patience and the camaraderie that they've established over time.
So we're kind of going to shift gears here. Obviously, this has been a big trade rumor in Pittsburgh. Brandon Aiyuk situation. Where is this heading, and do you think that the Steelers are a realistic option? We'd like to put the nail in the coffin at this point, but you know how the NFL offseason is. It could get a little bit crazy.
Well, I'm no insider, right? You're going to have to get Adam or somebody else to tell you what is going to happen.
Yeah.
I just know this, having been a team builder for many, many years in the NFL, I am not in a hurry to get rid of my best players. And I think Brandon Aiyuk is the best receiver the 49ers have. I know he's driving a bargain to get paid as a top echelon receiver, and we've seen what that market has done. I don't doubt that the 49ers are willing to pay him. So the trade rumors to me come from the Aiyuk camp, in that he keeps putting it out there that the 49ers don't want him. Well, I do know this to be true. The 49ers don't want him at his number, but they definitely want him at their number. So I think something's going to get worked out there. I just can't imagine the 49ers getting worse when their window right now to make progress with Purdy under his rookie deal is open to win a Super Bowl. I don't think that makes them better. And I really wouldn't care who the team was rumored to be acquiring Aiyuk. I don't really care what they're offering. Those draft picks, to me, mean absolutely nothing. I'm not going to let good players leave. So there may come a time when the marriage runs its course, but I surely don't think it's now for the 49ers.
Good to hear. So kind of talk about this, your thoughts on Russell Wilson. I believe, if I'm correct, what I read, you scouted him. How has his game changed over the years, and do you think that he can still get the job done? Obviously, 13 touchdowns in 2 seasons, like the threshold isn't too high in Pittsburgh right now for quarterback play, but do you think that he could give a chance to maybe make a deep playoff run, or, a playoff win would be nice at this point, but that's not the standard we set here in Pittsburgh, but we'll take it at this point.
Well, I'm a Seattle guy, so I've seen Russell in his prime in Seattle, and I've seen him toward the end of his tenure in Seattle, and that was a different player as well. Then we all saw what happened when he went to Denver for a couple of years. So in my opinion, Russell's 3 or 4 years removed now from the let Russ cook days. And so I don't think that's in the future for sure. I know Sean Payton, and I know his offense, and I know what he tried to do around Russell in Denver, and that didn't work out. Maybe the system works better for him in Pittsburgh. I'm probably less of the ilk of drinking the Kool-Aid that we're going to get the reincarnated Russ from 5-6 years ago. But I do think he's a functional passer of the football. He obviously has very good instincts and awareness. I think the one thing I'd be a little concerned about is I don't think he can run like he once did. So his legs aren't quite what they were. I don't think you're ever going to have a 300-yard passer week in and week out like he once was. But I do think in the structured defense of what Arthur Smith has going with the Steelers now, it might be a pretty good fit. I think they're going to have to run the ball, and that goes without saying. But I would only caution this. Denver went to running the ball as well and tried to play it as close to the vest as they can. And that didn't work great for Russ, although I don't think he was the reason they didn't get over the hump in Denver. So I think I like where the Steelers are on offense. I like the change of Arthur Smith. I think that was way overdue. But I also think that Justin Fields being there really is going to hold Russell accountable as well, because I really like Justin's skill set in Arthur Smith's offense.
Did you do any work on Justin? Were you I know you're involved heavily in draft prep with multiple organizations. So what were your thoughts on Justin coming out?
I thought Justin was an NFL quarterback. The one thing he had to prove to me, and it's been the same since he became a pro, is can he get the ball out? Can he process the information to get it out on time? And that's something that I think he's still working at. I think if he had done that, he'd probably still be in Chicago. But he has all the physical traits, all the skill set you need. We know he's a phenomenal athlete. I think his arm is more than adequate. He can make all the throws that an NFL passer should make. I think my hesitancy to stamp him is the fact that he's just got to find a way to get the ball out. He's got to see it quicker, and he's got to make decisions more definitively and get the ball out. If Arthur can get him to do that, I think the sky's the limit. I think he's an NFL passer.
I tell you what, our viewers around the world are going to love hearing that. No question about him, because he's a dynamic playmaker, and we're all very excited to watch him this preseason and hopefully into the season, just not on kick returns, Jordan, like our buddy Jalen Warren threw out there and somehow it's become a national story. Yeah. That guy is not going to be returning kicks, even though
Madden put him in the trailer returning kicks, and I think he even commented on it, like, what the heck is
smart,
going on?
Because it got everybody talking about it, and so I think you're going to maybe have more Madden purchases. No question about it. Hey, listen, we're hanging out with Randy Mueller, GM. Previously, the Saints, he's got him on his shirt. The Miami Dolphins as well, down near where I am at. Anytime we have somebody from the front office on, I am so interested in picking their brains. I'm enamored with the NFL draft. I know you just helped the Saints, right, in draft prep. I want some fly on the wall, behind the scenes stuff, just a couple of things. I mean, first of all, what kind of goes into putting a big board together? When do you guys start that process? Does it start during the season, right after the season ends?
I always equate that part of it to being similar to mowing the grass at the cemetery. As soon as you get done at one end, you got to start over on the other end because it's already grown up. So yes, and in some cases with the NFL draft, it's a 2-year process. We'll have some junior grades on players, and it is a long, arduous process. In a nutshell, you're really gathering information to build a consensus within your people in your building to find the best players to fit your schemes. It's not necessarily to find the best players. It's to find the best players for you. And I think that's probably as big a bit misnomer that's out there when it comes to draft prep and finding the right fit is you've got to find the players that your coaches can then fit into their schemes the best. So that's it, but it is a long process. I love the process itself. I think the other thing people would probably be surprised about is on draft day, how quiet it is, how much work has gone into this. It's like the final exam. We don't need to talk anymore about it. We know what's going to happen in front of us if we've done our homework. And so, hey, I've had owners talk to me and say, why is it so quiet? I said, well, we're just following along. We all know what the plan is, and we're going to know on draft day before it even gets to us what's going to happen. So I think those are key critical points to me, but you've got to build consensus. And as the leader of the front, as the GM, you've got to find a way to listen to everybody, but then get us on the right page for what's best for us. And that's a skill set in its own to have a GM who can evaluate on his own, but listen to others, and not necessarily the loudest voice in the room either. You've got to listen and know your evaluators. And sometimes that takes some time for GMs and other decision makers to figure out.
Mr. Mueller, I'm assuming you guys did a ton of homework on Steelers first-round pick, Troy Fautanu. Can you speak to him briefly?
Well, I looked at all these guys, and I think all of the offensive linemen that got picked in the top 15 or so are really good players. I think it was a rare year for offensive linemen. It came at a time where there has never been a greater need. Again, I lived in Seattle, so I saw the Steelers guy play for, the last 3 years. I think the one thing they got in him that probably is best suited is that I think he could play anywhere. I think he could play tackle. I think he could play guard. I think he could play center. So that is a big feather in their cap to where you're going to have to play multiple positions to get to dress on Sundays. And we all want these guys to fit in right away, day one at one spot. But it is nice, and a nice security blanket to have a guy that athletic who could fit in anywhere up front. And I do think the Steelers probably got the most versatile guy in the whole group of offensive linemen.
Go ahead, Jordan.
So yeah, before we get you out of here, just kind of skimming through everything that you did. It's a long list of great accolades, and you talked about the XFL. Are you still currently doing anything, and what's your plan? Do you want to get back into football? What's next for Randy?
Well, I'm old. That's why that list is long. I can tell you that. That's for sure.
It's a good list.
Yeah. I am not looking for a job. I can tell you that. I have one that I enjoy very much, working for the Athletic. I think that side of the table always suited me. I had one stint in my time about 20 years ago in between jobs where I actually worked for ESPN for 3 years. But I was in
Wow.
my mid 40s and I did TV, I did radio, I wrote for them. And I often said, if I was 63, not 43, I probably would have never left ESPN. But I left there to go to the Dolphins as their GM. So I enjoy the media side. I'm not looking to get back in the NFL. I've been there. I've done that. I'm about the people, and I love certain groups of people. And so it's really what drives me. I've had my day as far as running NFL teams, but I enjoy the processes, like I said, and that's always fun for me when I get asked for by a team questions or a group to help have some input. I enjoy that part of it, but I like where I'm at the Athletic.
That's great.
You got a great head of hair, by the way. You don't look a day over 43.
Well, I don't quite feel like that every day, but I'll take that as a compliment. I appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Randy, and we look forward to everything you're doing at the Athletic. And you never know. Just don't ever close the door on getting back to it. We'll leave it cracked. How about that?
We'll be rooting for it.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
We
guys.
really
Good to be with
appreciate
you.
your time. Take care,
Check
man.
them out at the Athletic and the FT Bowl GM pod. Great work over there. And just a great show. I mean, how often do you have a former NFL exec of the year and a recent GM who did draft prep for the New Orleans Saints this past year? That's a team that desperately needed offensive line help. So I had to ask about Fatanu, given the fact that obviously they scouted him heavily. I think I had mocked Fatanu multiple times to the Saints. And it just made a lot of sense. So it's good to hear that he's confident in his ability to play every single position on the offensive line. I don't know how much of that is a knock that he's not going to be an elite tackle, because I think that was a worry for a while in his, anybody who evaluated him. It's almost one of those things where, like, is it a backhanded compliment? Like, he could play anywhere on the line. Does that mean he's not an exceptional elite potential tackle? I think what we've seen from him, though, however, he's a bulldog. He's a fighter. He's just a guy who's going to make it because of his mentality and, the skill set and the arm length shows that he could play tackle as well. But I found that to be super interesting. What stuck out to you or some things?
I mean, just really saying that, like, and I think that everyone gets this, like, we watched, again, I keep saying that I'm never going to say this name, but, we watched Kenny Pickett for those 2 seasons, and then Russell Wilson comes in, and I don't, like you said, you heard him, he said he was there in Seattle for the Let Russ Cook days. If Russ can cook, like, halfway and give us 23 touchdowns, crap, I'll take 16 touchdowns at this point after the past 2 seasons. I think the Steelers are going to be in good hands. And really what stuck out to me was the Justin Fields. He spoke very highly of him, and a lot of people say what happened in Chicago is because of who he is as a quarterback, but I think it was more of the system. I'm not personally really too high on Justin Fields for the price that the Steelers got him. I think it's how could you not? The 2 quarterbacks that they have, I think it's a win-win at the end of the day. So I'm again just being optimistic and just waiting it out.
Russ can half cook. That's what my wife would say that I do when I'm in the kitchen. I half cook. It's like that pasta comes out.
I would say
al dente, but it doesn't. I don't mean it to be
air fryer.
Yeah, air fryer's been dope. It's been helping me a lot. It's like fake cooking. It doesn't count. But man, he was glowing when we said the name Justin Fields.
Yeah, and I was surprised with that for someone who was in Seattle when Russell Wilson was there. I'm sure obviously he has a relationship with Sean Payton as well. So we see how that kind of turned out in Denver. But yeah, I mean it's cool to knack a guy's brain like that who was there and a part of the process and the whole draft process. And it's like our podcast where 365 days. It's like I feel like you're always working. I think that's why Randy probably doesn't want to get back into the NFL because it's nonstop. He's, I'm sure he has a family and just wants some R&R time. He earned it.
The last point that I'll make, if you're just joining us live, thanks for checking out the Sick Podcast, Steelers Crazy. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm Mike Nicastro. That's Jordan York. And I hate bringing up this name now as much as you hate bringing up Kenny Pickett, and that's Brandon Aiyuk. He touched on that situation. And as a former GM, he does not understand or would not understand why a team that has all these parts that could potentially win a Super Bowl, arguably the best team on paper in the National Football League, would trade one of their maybe 5, call it, probably 10 best players. He could not put that together. And I think that makes a lot of sense at the end of the day. We saw a report today that maybe 49ers and Aiyuk are getting a little bit warmer in regards to him staying. But he understands the contract situation is not ideal in either camp. But he doesn't understand why the 49ers would let him go in any capacity, given the fact that they want to win a Super Bowl now.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to saying, like, of course, like, his camp's going to want him to get the most money. I think that the 49ers want to, work out something. It's just not at the price that he wants it. Kind of the same thing that's going on with Cam Hayward in Pittsburgh right now. Obviously it's a different, kind of thing where they're at in their career, but it's the same idea. It's like, I'm sure the Steelers want to keep Cam Hayward and have him retire a Steeler and possibly, get him a Super Bowl. He deserves it. But again, I'll say it, for what he's asking, it just simply doesn't make sense. It's detrimental to the team, to be honest, because it is. It's not in the grand scheme of things. It makes absolutely no sense. So
he'll end up staying in Pittsburgh. I think, unfortunately for Cam, he is not going to get as much as he thinks he would get on the open market, anyways. If that, if he does not stay in the Berg. So if you're going to get similar contracts, you might as well stay at home. I'll tell you one place he's not going, and that's Cleveland. I got to get one of those T-shirts, bro. I ain't going to Cleveland. That's one of my favorite quotes in recent Twitter history, because obviously he's not a guy that wants to play for a rival anytime soon.
Nope. Well, hey, we appreciate everyone hanging out with us. As always, we'll be rocking and rolling. Make sure you subscribe. I am Jay York Football. This is Mic'd Up Sports 1. There it is, Yins. The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Just really cool getting a GM's perspective just on everything, and just puts a lot of things into perspective, and just put your seatbelt on and enjoy the ride.
Thanks for
Jimmy,
watching.
Take it away.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.